Hello, everyone. This is Jeff from Irenicast. And if you haven't been listening to the show lately, you may be wondering, what is Irenicast doing in my podcast feed on a Wednesday? Well, this is our first in a limited series of conversations that we're going to be having between our episodes, and they will regularly be taking place on Facebook Live and YouTube Live to give you, our listeners, an opportunity to talk about the previous episode, give us your thoughts, perhaps ask any questions, and we're taking the audio from these live events and we're putting them here on the feed to see how that goes. So we hope you enjoy this post conversation. And if you would like to be involved in the next one, it'll be taking place on Monday, May 11th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. You can go into the show notes for this particular episode at irenicast.com/convo165. That's irenicast.com/convo165 to get all the information and details on that. So here we go. Our first inaugural continuing the conversation from our Facebook Live event. I hope you enjoy it. All right. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Irenicast. I'm Jeff.
It's your boy, Alan.
It's Bonnie. Good to see you.
It's Casey. Hello, everyone.
Hey, it's Rajeev.
Thank you for joining us for our first ever live and continuing conversation on episode 165 of Irenicast as we continue to provoke your progressive Christian imagination. Thank you for joining us on this first ever live event that we're going to be doing. And we're going to be doing this for at least the next couple months. After every episode, we're going to come on Mondays at 5, or the Monday after an episode posts at 5, 5 Pacific Standard Time on Monday evenings. And we're just going to have kind of a post conversation, a continuing conversation, if you will, on the episode that we just posted on what is truth. And this conversation, if you are watching live, we welcome you. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, then we also welcome you. And you can always find us at irenicast.com/YouTube or or facebook.com/irenicast if you want to go back and watch this instead of listen to it. But we want to make it available as possible. So if you prefer just to listen to our voices, I know that a lot of people have some shock when they first see someone that they've only heard for a long time. And they're like, that is not how I pictured them.
How beautiful my voice turned out to be.
So I would be curious for those of you.
That's a podcasting face for sure.
I would be curious for those of you later to find out like how many of you were accurate in your guesstimation of what we looked like.
No, we don't want to know that, Jeff.
I want to know that. I'm super curious.
Look, there are pictures of us all over the Irenicast website.
That's true. And we are on the cover art now, so I guess it doesn't. But then who is who? Like we didn't label them. Maybe people were like,
that's true. Who's
we mixed and matched a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
Like what I'm hearing, many pictures from school.
What I'm hearing is that Jeff is inviting comment on his appearance. So if you'd like to do that.
That's right.
I am. You can put my picture on Hot or Not. Is that still a thing?
It is still a thing. Yeah.
I've got this little icon to hide behind a little bit.
Yeah. Remember in school you brought baby pictures in and they put a number near your baby picture.
That's a good idea.
Like, guess who?
Oh, right.
Yeah, well.
Rajeev, I don't
Next
yeah,
time.
well, what?
Going to school with a bunch of white kids, you know.
guess which baby's Rajeev.
or black kids because they had little froze. So.
Oh my god.
All right. Well, let's get down to the business of our continuing conversation. So how this is going to work, we're going to try to keep a regular flow. We're going to kind of maybe give our thoughts on the episode. Maybe we forgot to mention something. Maybe we wanted to highlight something or whatever. And then we're going to open the floor to everyone who's watching and listening right now. And you can send us in some questions or some thoughts that you had on that particular episode. And then we'll close out with a little preview, a little spoiler, if you will, of what the next episode is going to be about. So any one of you have any thoughts about this last episode that we put up? Any surprises, any reflections, any regrets for what you put out there?
I'm feeling like surprisingly prone to invite people along the journey, I guess. I gave up a long time ago any sort of like call to action where I'm telling people they need to follow me toward anything that's true or anything like that. But when I was reflecting about this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, the land beyond all of this like surface level, we said capital T truth all the time, but the land beyond that really is like flowing with milk and honey, like God is in the land beyond that. And so I feel like telling people that, and it's surprising to me, I guess.
Yeah, I find that so there are some episodes that we put out that I'm like, oh my God, how did that turn out? But I really, really enjoyed this last episode, and I think I've listened to it a few times just because the conversation was so rich in terms of like getting clear, even for ourselves, about what does it mean to follow this path towards truth. Not that we'll ever arrive anywhere, right? And so I think it's an important conversation for sure. Yeah.
I was struck as I listened to it again. I was struck how much we connected learning and truth. And, I had to listen to it over in order to be able to draw that out in the listening. But we really saw learning, I think, is connected to truth. And that resonates with me.
I think something I noticed listening to it, I think the second time through, was, individuals are on journeys. We talk about that a lot, but groups that are closely knit are also on journeys. And I heard that second time through that we are less attached to certainty as a source of comfort and guidance than we as a group were a year ago. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's pretty exciting. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I ditto all those things. Like, I think that's the nice thing about this conversation is I think we all came from this static place of truth, this place where truth is this thing to be attained, like we talked about in the episode. And I really appreciated how all of our answers in some way reflected a journey, whether it was learning or whether it was where we were and where we are, and even where we're hoping to be in terms of what we view truth, and how relevant it became when we recorded it. We recorded it just before all this happened, or as it was kind of coming to fruition. And I know that we've all struggled with facts and truth just with the current administration. And I think that
we haven't struggled with facts.
Right, exactly.
Let's be clear.
But I was just struck how timely it is. And I think that as we do this show and as we all meet together and we begin to record these things, I don't think I've maybe noticed and have been appreciative of how our timing has worked out in terms of how we all came together. But for some reason, this topic really, I don't know, it was one of those. I feel like something I gave up a long time ago was the idea of divine appointment, but yet the last 3 months, I feel like I've had these moments where it's like, maybe there is something bigger guiding, or maybe there's not, and it's just a coincidence. But either way, I feel like it was good timing to have this conversation and watch it flourish.
I think there's something to that process of letting go of something and then having it come rushing back in like a totally different way, letting go of your concepts or the things you've felt loyal to, and then looking at them differently, or showing up at home again and seeing home differently for the first time, as all the hero journeys would say. So that process itself of letting go of some of our certainty and then receiving some gifts back from where we've come from is a sacred journey I think all of us are on to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a total side note, but I opened up 2 fortune cookies in the last month, and I want to share them with you. The first one said, "And invest." Don't look at me that way, Casey. It said,
I'm like, questions? Anybody?
Yeah, have your questions ready while Alan muses about his
if you're listening
fortune
to this,
cookies.
Yeah, if you're listening to this this live stream, feel free to ask questions or tell us things about truth in your life or your journey and how things have gone. Anyway, this is totally random, But I opened up a fortune cookie like a month ago, and it said an investment opportunity will be profitable for you. And the next one I opened up said invest in others.
Wow.
Ooh.
Okay, seriously, like
Jeff, if you didn't believe before, you got to believe now.
the Wednesday before, before there was all the shelters in places and all that kind of stuff, my family and I, we went to a Chinese food restaurant, mainly out of support because we were seeing some of the bubbling versions of racism that was starting to bubble up. And I kid you not, my fortune cookie said exactly what your first fortune cookie said, Alan. Like, that's exactly what my fortune cookie said was.
Well, what I got out of that story, Alan, was never eat just one fortune cookie.
Amen.
Always eat at least two.
At least
See if
two.
see if those fortunes will come together like that.
So I don't know about you, but in my household, the way that we eat fortune cookies and then read the fortune is at the end, after you've read it, you have to say in bed.
Right.
In bed.
It's like a part of it.
Or you can say from the pulpit.
From the
From the
pulpit.
pulpit.
I learned from some
Isn't that
former
the same
youth
thing
group-
these days?
former youth group members. You add in bed with Jesus.
Yeah.
Even better. Even better.
Those
Yeah,
kids,
this just
man, they're all going straight to hell. Youth group kids.
Youth group kids come up with the.
We definitely need some questions, please.
Yeah, everyone's like, what?
So
what's
start
happening right
prepping
now?
your questions. Please do that in the comments. Sometimes we don't get the comments, so don't be shy to put it twice. If in case you feel like we're not answering, we're going to try to get to as many as we possibly can, as many that come through. And we also understand that as we do this, that some of your responses and some of your comments are difficult to express in just like a short comment. So if you find yourself listening to the episode and you want to email us like a longer response to something, please feel free to do that. And you can do that at podcast@irenicast.com, and we'll get that and we'll look through those before we start our lives going forward to see if there's any other comments there. So feel free to give us any of your questions or thoughts on truth. I know that we did, when I did the Sunday mic check, I know that we had a couple people, actually one person in particular, Caitlin mentioned how it's such a big topic and she was just gathering her thoughts together, and it's difficult to just kind of in a comment put those questions. So we understand as we're doing this for the first time that this is an exercise for all of us as we're learning to, first of all, utilize Facebook Live and all that kind of stuff, but then also learn how to better interact with everyone as we go through. So please feel free to put your questions or comments in the comments here.
So Bonnie, tell me about a time when, when those early days when they were talking about truth, like something that you knew was not true, but people were telling you had to receive it as truth. Like as soon as when did that start switching for you?
The people weren't saying truth.
The
to
things
me.
that's right. Things that you knew were not true.
Well, I remember when I was teaching kindergarten, a kindergartner asked me this question, and I was like, how come I never thought of that before? She was checking to make sure. This was a kindergartner that I was teaching in parochial school, Christian school. And she said, God is like ever present, right? God never dies. Jesus is God. So how did Jesus die?
Yeah.
Like those kinds of things, we I don't know, I never questioned that until that moment. And I'm like, that's like such a basic logical question.
Right.
So yeah. Then that made me wonder.
Right. See, it was a kindergartner who led you
It was a kindergartner. Yeah. Well, that was just one little,
led you astray.
yeah, but kinda.
Yeah.
Don't follow that kid into the forest.
That's right. See, let some little kids come to me, Jesus says.
Yeah.
We did have one comment when we started talking about youth group questions. Richard Glotto said, Jeff, don't share our youth group questions. Richard is a former guest of the show. You can listen to him. I believe it was episode 10. I'll put it in the show notes for this once it gets there. It'll be irenicast.com/165 combo. Combo 165. I'll figure that out, but check the show notes. And then, for a while, he was at the same church that I was, and we ran a youth ministry together kind of the beginnings of one. And it was an interesting experience. You know how like when you're running a group and there's always those like exceptions to the rule? Our whole group were the exceptions to the rule. So
and I can say that's true because we did a joint youth group together, and my students were from like a pretty nice area of Pasadena, South Pasadena, and we put our students together, and it was so fun to see how different their lives were.
Well, that was with my other youth group. This was when I was at the UMC church.
You know, your youth groups have always been exceptions to the rule, Jeff.
So I want to hear what some of your questions were. I feel like that was an invitation. What was the youth group question, Jeff?
I'm trying to remember.
You know what?
You're not trying to remember. You remember. You just don't want to share them.
I don't remember specific ones. I remember it not with Richard, our commenter, but with one of the questions I got in one of my junior high group at the last evangelical church I was at was one of the students got up and just asked, like, what if you were Samoan and didn't know it? Right in the middle of my sermon. And I had no idea. I couldn't make heads or tails on where that connection went to, or I didn't understand. It was
this person Samoan?
No.
One of my students once asked, they were like, hey, we're supposed to love everybody, right? I was like, yeah, pretty sure that's the case. And they said, well, are we supposed to love the devil? And I honestly didn't know what to say. And now I would say yes. I would say, sure, why not? Like, give your, let your compassion grow. I don't know what happens in transferring from like youth and asking all those really deep questions that pull things basically apart. We eventually stop asking those. Like, in popular culture, you think of like Neverland and, Peter Pan and like that, like loss of innocence kind of thing where you're no longer wondering about the magic in the world. Maybe that's necessary for building strong structures and families and stuff, or keeping down a 9-to-5 job. But I love those people who never lose the sense of asking really dumb, basic questions that everyone else knows the answer to.
Yeah. The breadcrumbs on the journey to truth is certainly questions, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Absolutely.
And I think and this is, Bonnie, like you were talking about the kindergarten kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure that if that kindergarten kid asked any pastor, they'd say, well, don't worry about that. Or that's just where faith lies, So from an early age, people, when we ask those questions, oftentimes what they try to do is seek to prevent us from asking them. Or they want to silence us or move past them quickly because they're not ready to go to ask those questions of themselves. Because they stopped wondering.
Yeah.
And hearing Bonnie saying that like learning is so attached to the journey toward truth, and then someone else was talking about losing certainty. Like we as a group, I think it was Rajeev. Did you say that? We as a group have like kind of moved away from the comfort that certainty gives us toward a little bit more of an exploratory place. And the thing I think about kids that they learn so well is because they're not ashamed when they're wrong. They're not ashamed when their thoughts need to be revised. Whereas all of us are invested in all of these things that have to be true for the last 10 years, not to have been wasted or something like that. Whereas kids, when they're wrong, they just put it down and, move on, and they don't have strong feelings toward their mistake.
Right.
And, some of us have spent many years and many, many, many dollars making mistakes, like being in places that were bad for us and bad for other people. And we invested in those. And so we have an attachment to that, and leaving those kind of truths behind is probably an interesting process and could use a lot of self-compassion toward it.
Right.
For sure. I'm going to go take bread out of the oven. I'll be right back.
Yay.
I think another thing is like the fear of failure. It's like and by that I mean it's connected to the fear of being wrong. In some way those things are correlated. Like if I can't prove my point well enough, or if I haven't read enough, there's a fear of failing or a fear of being wrong that I think limits us from expanding not just our minds but the possibilities of who we could be. I think that's one of the best things that Bonnie has introduced us to in terms of process theology is like the options are limitless. Like there are constantly opportunities and imaginative ways of being and understanding the world. We just have to imagine what they could be and imagine what we could be. But we're so afraid of that because, like you said, it could impact our 9-to-5s, or it could force us out of relationships that maybe we have been so desperate to hold on to. So it's a scary place to wonder.
Yeah. And I think that that's even more responsibility on us who have any kind of forum, is the posture that we take when we're receiving questions, right? Like we talk about children who are, they have a lot of wonder and they're not worried about failure, but where do they come worried about that? And I feel like a lot of times, at least in my experience, it was the way that someone responded to a question that maybe wasn't, smart or a good question, or seemed kind of odd. And then what kind of posture people who I went to for answers presented to me. And I think that that's important too, as we, especially as we're doing a show where we're, talking about our knowledge and our expertise, and people are coming to us with questions, that what is our posture with that? And how do we handle truth when we are the person that someone is seeking it from?
Well, yeah. I think it's Steinbeck that says nobody wants advice, only corroboration. And oftentimes we enter conversations sort of with the trope of, hey, I could use some advice, or hey, I'd like to know what you think. And you're really going in for some confirmation because you're struggling with something. Maybe you feel like you've gotten a direction that you'd like to go, and you're hoping this friend or whoever is going to go, yeah, that's great. That's exactly where you need. Because if they don't confirm that and actually say, well, what about, that can be really difficult. Because we go in. So it's hard to have a posture of openness where you go in where, I'm really not sure. So let me ask some trusted people what they think, digest all of it, and then formulate a sense of direction.
Right. All right. Well, we are still, speaking of which, we're still open to questions. We'll probably be on for a few more minutes. So get your questions in if you have any in regard to truth or our previous episode, or even the segment of the episode, the two truths and a lie game that we played, and revealing a little bit more about ourselves. And I'm still upset and bitter that Alan, spoilers, won that round. And despite my best efforts, I was foiled again by Alan's creepy intimacy.
That was mine to win, Jeff. And I gave you the benefit of the doubt on one of them.
Don't pathologize my need for intimacy, Jeff. How dare you?
I still want to, I'm just disappointed that Rajeev said he had not been naked in the back of a pickup truck.
Well, has that changed, Rajeev? Update.
Right, that's right.
No, well, and when I said I have never been naked in the back in a pickup truck. Period. I'm not saying I haven't been partially naked.
Okay.
I was saying, I'm thinking like totally.
Right.
Like you're just all out there.
Yeah.
That's never happened.
But how do you define partially naked? That's what, like, sleeveless, or you're going like one.
Come on, Jeff. This is a PG show, right?
Yes. All right. Well, we did have a comment. Case and Maples, thank you so much for commenting. And don't really have a question at the moment, but you wanted to say hi. Well, hi.
Hey,
thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kason.
Yeah, this is a big topic. So even just a hi makes us
that's right.
Yeah,
feel warm
absolutely.
Inside. It's a Facebook Live hug as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for saying hi, Kason.
Virtual hugs in the time of quarantine.
That's right.
That's right. That's all we got sometimes.
One thing that's kind of stuck on my mind is just the certainty question. Do you all agree with Rajeev that like you've let go of the need for certainty a little bit more in your own sort of journey?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainty is oftentimes the enemy.
And I think honestly, when we talk about like thinking partners, as Alan likes to call them, um, anyway, so it makes it really hard because I'm not committed to anything I say, right? And I think for a lot of people that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are things that I believe today that I won't believe tomorrow. And especially I won't believe, like I tell people at my church, like I am an atheist until 10 a.m. So if you're coming to me like for pastoral care before 10 a.m., wait till like 10:05, you know? So even on a daily basis, the way that I see the world or understand God from moment to moment can change. And I think that for some people, they need that, you know, I mean, God is the same as what is it today, yesterday, and
forever.
Yeah, forever. Some horrific statement. But those are not the kinds of conversations I care to have or even engage in. So
do you think that depends on the context? Because I think that's in the Bible, right? I'm not saying that makes it holy or necessarily you can't like digest it, right? But I think there are moments in my life where it feels good that there is something bigger than me that outlasts me, you know, and is like saying that God doesn't change is another way of saying that God is remaining compassionate and faithful and is in the story like long after me. But when someone quotes that at me, you're right. Like I'm not interested in that conversation, you know, if they're using it as like a rhetorical device.
Well, I think part of what you're saying too, Casey, is that being accused of not having convictions because once you become more comfortable with uncertainty, then, you know, what's your message? What's your, you know, what is it that you feel like you need to share with the world? I think that changes too.
Big time.
And the methods do too.
That's right. And it almost comes to this point of like, I have nothing to prove to you, right? I have like, if you're seeking to come to this conversation and you want to argue about something that you think is true, you're barking up the wrong tree, bro. And it's often a bro, right? I just don't have time for that.
It is not there. Well, we got our question from Lauren. Lauren, hello, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Lauren says, I've always had the feeling that church tends to be at odds with the scientific world, and it seems like it's out of fear that they'll lose their certainty when faced with scientifically proven facts. Do you think there's a correlation with these anti-shelter-in-place orders? Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a good question.
I'll keep that up as we talk about that so people can read it. Oh, it's cutting off a little bit.
Hiding some people there.
It's hiding some people. So we'll put that up for a second. And then, let's start with Alan and Rajeev if you want to respond. And then if Casey, you just peek up a little bit over.
You can't hide Casey and Bonnie, man. That's 75% of our good looks there.
I'd say 100, but that's fine.
Well, if we're going there, then that's all in one square.
That's right. I agree.
So she's talking. She clarifies. She clarifies. So sorry, the protests, not the orders. So she's.
Go ahead, Alan. I have a thought.
Yeah, the fact that the church is at odds with the scientific world is like a historically proven phenomenon, right? That reaches back pretty far, but specifically in our country, you can trace its roots back to like, especially the Scopes monkey trial, and then after that, there's this anti-scientific like a rigor to evangelical spirituality. I don't know if you're in the United States or not, Lauren, but I definitely think there is a correlation between certainty. Yeah, people are not in the church at least comfortable with uncertainty because the answers that science provides are so powerful. Like they actually are demonstrable and they're repeatable and they're something that, whereas church deals more in mysteries, right? Like grace is this mystery, this thing that's like developing, and you almost can't look at it and observe it without changing it. And so, I think the really strong answers of science have unsettled a lot of folks who have built their faith on, these quote unquote facts and truths that matter more to them, I think, than embracing uncertainty and mystery.
I I know I bring race into it a lot, but that's often because race needs to be brought into it. But I think, honestly, white people don't like being told what to do.
That's right.
They just don't. And so you got white people telling other white people, can I say stuff on this, Jeff?
Probably not.
If it slips out, there's nothing I can do, but
we can't edit it out. So stay the F home. And they're like, you're not going to tell me what all this blah, stuff. So it's just this twisted, and then, then they want to bring in religion as some sort of defense for that kind of white supremacist nonsense. And I mean, really, the white supremacy is on display.
That's
at
right.
A lot of these things, the
That's
guns, the Confederate flag, the Nazi symbols. It's all out there. So it's not some big revelation. And I feel bad because as a Christian, Christianity so often gets pulled in by these whack jobs who, want to taint an entire tradition and history, that isn't theirs, by the way. It's not a white man's religion.
That's right.
Christianity is an Eastern faith. It's a brown person's faith. Anyway, so, that's my thought.
And if we go back far enough, we'll find that science in many ways was born out of Christianity and out of religious traditions, because that's where the learning happened. Was the folks who studied the religious traditions also studied about the world and the relationship between religion and the world. And so science came into being. I think we forget our legacy sometimes.
Totally.
As people of this faith.
The Saint Dorothy Day is quoted in saying, the church is a whore, but she is our mother. And I think a lot of times when we want to talk about science and religion, what we forget is there's power and money involved. And I think for many people, the fear is that science would become people's religion, and then where would we stand? And so they set themselves apart as a way at odds with science, because they were afraid of if science could prove these things, then where do we matter, I guess, would be the question. Instead of understanding that we're talking about different things. As you listen to these next few episodes around truth, you will understand clearly, I think, that what we're talking about, we're not looking for facts, stubborn facts, as Rajeev was talking about. We're offering truths, things that we can hold lightly, things that have the ability to be planted in us and unrooted. And Christianity has tried to make itself the place where stubborn facts exist, and that is just that's not our realm for things. At least certain things. And Rajeev, can I just speak to what you were saying earlier about white supremacy and, the gun-toting anti-stay-at-home folks? These are the same people who say that undocumented people should follow the rules, follow the law, and come through legally. These are the same people, when black people are shot on the street, say, well, if they would have just laid on the ground or held up their hands and followed the law. Now they're being asked to follow the law, to do the right thing. And when they're told that, they show up with guns.
Yeah, and just a quick correction. Bonnie's the one that brought up stubborn facts.
It's actually Alfred North Whitehead.
Sorry.
Brought it up.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bonnie.
No, that's okay.
A&W brought it up.
But I was just going to say, but what truth is being shaken that is causing these protests? It's this truth that we are somehow self-reliant, self-sufficient.
Supremacy of the individual.
And that there is a hierarchy of people who are better than others. And this virus doesn't discriminate. And so we're all susceptible to it in the same ways. And I think that is what people are actually protesting.
Yeah.
Right. And I think specifically with evangelicalism, I think certainty is the evangelical God. Everything that we were taught is that you be certain you're going to go to heaven tonight if you get to a car wreck on the way home. Like, be certain that Jesus is in your heart. And it's this false certainty because you always kind of have to renew your agreement, so to speak, or you kind of have to go through the whole thing again. Oh my God.
It's terms of service religion. I
right.
love it.
So I think that's part of it too, at least with people who may be part of these protests. And then I also think that there's an inherent us versus them that makes that type of Christianity thrive, so to speak. Like it's so dualistic and binary in terms of good and evil. And if the people that you've deemed as good are telling you that this is a hoax or that we're over exaggerating, then you're going to take that fervor out into the world. And I think that the scientific community has been labeled as left since the monkey trials or whatever. And I think that anything that's coming from a scientist is automatically discredited if it is against something that you, like everything else you all are talking about, something you want to do. But but how many times have we heard a sermon that uses scientific research to point to, like, this is why what I'm saying is true. So I think I think that's a big part of it.
Scientific research done at the labs at Liberty University.
Right. Right. Kaysen writes in with a question, and he says, I've reached a point where knowing that I don't have all the answers and being confident in that is comforting, because I know I'm not alone in not knowing, and I don't need to know all the answers. That's beautifully said.
That is.
Yeah.
We're with you, Kaysen, for sure.
Right.
Yep.
And then he goes on to say, and he says, and the same MF who says women and trans queer people shouldn't have autonomy over their bodies. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me in the self-censorship movement.
Yes. Normally on our Facebook Live, we wouldn't do that. We're not a bunch of prudes up here, but our because this is going in our podcast feed, there's certain countries where, colorful language will get you kicked out, and we want as many people to hear our stuff as possible. So.
Facebook might have some stuff too, right?
I think you can go for it. I mean, so far in our Sunday mic check, we've haven't exactly followed that, so we'll see.
Maybe this will sound a little bit elitist or something, but I think a lot of folks bundle God, country, guns, their rights, or their race or whatever, all of it together, because it gives them a really powerful identity that requires a lot of certainty. Like, I know my family, I know my God, I know my faith. And I think those people who can really indwell their faiths, their families, with like one foot out and one foot in at the same time, have gone through that process of like individuation and maturing and started questioning some of the myths that they grew up with, because we've inherited a lot of like mythological truth through our families, through our country. And I can appreciate how remaining in that realm and just shoring them up and that giving my life all of its contents can be like a soothing thing, but it always constantly requires defense, like always requires defense. Like, the liberals are out there trying to destroy the family. People are attacking our country. People are attacking our faith. We're at war. And really what it is this like psychological battle to not move kind of beyond those identity markers and embrace kind of a bigger wholeness or a flourishing that takes us deeper into those things, but also beyond them. So that's how I kind of see it, I guess, is that folks want certainty and that they get stuck on that part of the journey. Not to say they should keep going, but that's what it looks like to me.
I think it's just...
Go ahead, Casey. No, you go.
Please go. No, go.
I was just going to say, I think what you're saying, Alan, is so hopeful. And I know that may sound not hopeful to people, but when things advance to the place where it requires the level of defense that construction of reality requires in today's world, and I'm speaking about folks who say, guns and white supremacy and all of those are truths that they want to hold on to. When it requires that level of defense, that means it's starting to fall apart. It's crumbling. Because everyone, I think most people know, any truth actually worth holding on to is sort of self-evident. It doesn't require defense. Other folks, other people just are like, yeah, I can go with that. So if you're in a defensive posture most of the time, perhaps it's worth considering, like, what's going on? What's going on that's requiring so much of your energy defending?
Like 75% of my evangelical spirituality was apologetics.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know?
Right.
Every other book on my shelf. And I was getting all the answers to the questions I wasn't asking. And that's when you know that you're in the wrong space.
Casey, you wanted to say something. I interrupted you. Please say what you were going to say.
It's gone. It's
I'm
gone.
sorry.
Well,
I just, I mean, I am always just flabbergasted by the, you know, like the hypocrisy in terms of like, what does it mean to be pro-family? When again, these people are supporting children separated from their families at our border. What are we, what are we pro-life? I mean, we just had conversations about that in terms of pro-life. Like, what does it mean to be pro-life when you've now decided that the economy is worth saving over my grandma or my grandpa, you know, whose lives are, you know, give me liberty or give me death. Well, who are you willing to sacrifice for that? Just so that our economy can go back to normal. It just doesn't feel right. It feels super hypocritical. But Bonnie, you were right on in saying that if you are always in a defensive posture, maybe there's something worth looking at. Totally.
Well, and I think by extension, we're not talking about this specifically right now, but the same commentary can be thrust upon male supremacy and most men in their recognition that the identity of masculinity is changing. The ship has really sailed. It's just folks are trying to hang on to the way it used to be.
Well, I think that thank you all for your questions during this time. This was fun. This was our first time, all five of us together on Facebook Live. So
I think it was Casey who said it's cool to see our faces.
Yes,
I 100% agree. I get to see these lovely faces every time we record.
Thanks, Casey.
So we will be. Go ahead, Casey.
And just thank you, Kason, for being on and asking questions. And Lauren, you also.
Lauren, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So that'll do it for this first edition of Continuing the Conversation so we'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss our next episode, which will be a continuation of Truth. Spoilers, this truth subject has already turned into a 4-parter. And when we record the 4th part, who knows if we're going to continue on with that. So, we're going to continue the conversation on truth. I think we nailed it to 4, but we'll see. But next week, specifically, on Tuesday, our episode is going to post about moral truth, not tomorrow, Tuesday, but Tuesday after. So if you want anything, if you're listening now and you want to, check out anything, go to our website on Wednesday when this episode gets on our Facebook, because right now the URL isn't live. But if you go to irenicast.com/convo165, that's irenicast.com/convo165.
Buy some merch.
All the notes for this episode will be there, including a link to our YouTube page if you want to watch this, if you're just doing this. And so that's kind of all that. And then also don't forget that if you'd like to support Irenicast and all the continued work that we're doing, you can go to our PayPal link and support that way, a one-time donation or an ongoing donation. We always appreciate that. And you can do that at irenicast.com/PayPal. A lot of Irenicast. So you're never going to forget our name, Irenicast, irenicast.com. You'll get all the information there. Kason, thank you. Kason says, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day. Peace and blessings. And Lauren says, thank you guys. Stay safe. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
So until next time, I'm Jeff.
It's your boy, Alan.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
Peace, love, and hugs. This is Rajeev.
Thanks for continuing the conversation with us. Everyone have a great evening.